You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported.
Scott, I have a movie pitch for you, the next installment of the MCU.
Oh, I'm excited. Tell me all about it.
Think about it. 1 Shang-Chi is good, 3 Spider-Man, great,
Okay.
6, 7 Avengers, it's awesome. What about 10 Eternals, ancient demigods that have been here since the beginning of time?
Okay, whoa, Liam. I have some notes.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies as suggested by you. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver.
And today we are discussing the 2021 film Eternals, the MCU.
Expanding.
Indeed.
A lot.
Expanding way into the past.
Significantly. This was one of my first trips back to the theater. I braved the theater during hashtag Best Summer Ever to go see this flick.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got to, it was my second time with it. I know we have lots to discuss, but I will say there is whatever you think of the internal logic of this film, it gets slightly more cohesive on a second viewing.
That's fair.
Yeah, I can see that. There's definitely a lot of names going on that I was like glazing over. That opening title crawl might as well have been like just nonsense. Didn't bother reading it.
It felt like the opening crawl of Dune in many ways to me. The movie's not great, but I didn't find it offensively bad. Like it was watchable. It has its flaws. But like it's not terrible.
We've definitely watched worse movies for this podcast. There's no doubt about that. I was not pleased with the length of it. Being 2.5 hours was a little frustrating, especially as we'll get into. I found it quite boring on just about every level.
Oof.
And some of that isn't necessarily the movie's fault. Like, I don't care for this sort of like a bunch of heavenly space weenuses come down to Earth and teach mankind about stuff. Like, it's just not a concept that interests me in any particular way. So, like, right off the hop, I'm already kind of like biased against it.
You don't think there was like something interesting? But you're this is like big Star Trek vibes. This is like,
oh, you know what? I'm glad you brought up Star Trek because
like,
there's an episode of there's an episode of Star Trek Next Generation where they go on an archaeology hunt for a bunch of artifacts, and in the end, they find out that the thing that they're looking for is actually like a message from a very ancient race of beings that seeded planets all over the galaxy with life and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't care about this. I don't like this is lame. Like it's like it kind of takes away some of like sort of the science magic that Star Trek has, because it often adheres to like tries to go along with, you know, serious science. And then like also we got seeded by space aliens. Like, no, thank you. I don't like.
So you're coming down hard on space seeds.
Yeah.
This is a sci-fi trope no for Greg. Interesting. Okay.
It was also like Trek's way of trying to explain why everybody was a humanoid alien that looked kind of humanish, except with like weird meatloaf on their face.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if you can definitely understand that, but like that's one of those things in my mind. It's like doesn't need explaining, don't care.
Fair enough.
Oh, they try to explain why all aliens are still bipedal humanoids
and are able to crossbreed because apparently there are half Vulcans and half
hilarious. I gotta
Klingons.
watch this one.
So,
okay, sweet.
Yeah, and a half Bajoran, half Cardassian character in Deep Space Nine. The reason why all species can crossbreed is because we're all basically the same. We share the same DNA.
Sweet. Big ideas in Star Trek and big ideas in this movie too, but were they explored thoroughly?
No.
I guess we will discuss. But first, just for those that might not know, of course, Eternals, Marvel flick, Phase 4, baby, let's go. Kevin Feige bringing around Act 2. Directed by Chloe Zhao, written by Chloe Zhao, Patrick Burley, and Ryan Firpo. That's a fun name to say. Much has been discussed on the size of this cast, so I'm going to bang through this cast list real quick here. We got Gemma Chan, Richard Madden, Angelina Jolie, Selma Hayek, Kumail Nanjiani, to name a few. I don't feel like reading the rest of them.
That's fine.
Yeah, those are the big ones. The ones you're like, oh, that guy. I mean, interesting cast. I like seeing Selma Hayek's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Can I take this conversation in a brief aside?
Please.
Because this movie has the Marvel sequence, like the studio sequence after the cold open.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a weird aesthetic thing, but like I don't like that the title of the movie of every movie now for Marvel appears to be Marvel Studios. I don't like that. Like, do you guys have any feelings on that, or is that just like a weird quirk that I have?
I have no strong feelings one way or the other.
Yeah, that it's called Marvel Studios The Eternals.
Well, no, it's just that like they don't, because you don't get the actual The Eternals title until the end, right? But like they just like it's just a Marvel Studio thing. It's almost like I often compare the Marvel movies to television series because that's essentially what it is. But like this is almost like a step too far, where it's like I'm watching a new episode. I don't know. I just like I like title sequences, and I like the artwork of unique title sequences, and this kind of takes away from that. Like,
sure.
I always really like the build up to the movie starting. Like, I love the Fox fanfare. That's one of my favorite movie fanfares, and that's part of that like Star Wars magic, you know. Like you get the Fox fanfare, and then you get the silence, and then the big music beat or whatever, and I like that kind of stuff. Like that gets me jazzed from the movie. And like if the Marvel Studios logo just came up first and then we got like its own unique title sequence, that would be great. I'm just kind of, it's a weird thing that I just don't prefer it aesthetically.
They put their money into the end credits though, usually. Because
Marvel
movies
they definitely
have very stylistic end credit rolls, partly because they know you're going to be sitting through them for the post-credit scenes and the mid-credit scenes and the mid-credit scenes. But you're right. They do have a lot of truncated beginnings now.
Yeah, of all the criticisms you can levy against this film, that was not what I was expecting, but sure.
It's a very minor quibble with a movie that's got like a lot of other major issues. I'll admit that, but like having watched the video recently that Why Title Sequences Matter by, I'm forgetting his name.
Patrick Willems.
That's right. Like it made me realize like how much I really love that mood setting in the credit sequences. Just like and the other thing that it does is it gives you, as he tells it, like it gives you a sense of the score. You know, I think that's part of the reason why there aren't as many memorable scores for Marvel movies, is because they don't really give you any of it until the whole movie is going through. Like the only one I really remember is the Avengers theme, and that's only because I've seen, 6 or 7 Avenger movies or whatever the fuck it is, and I'm just like, I just learned it through osmosis, right? Good theme, but like, yeah, there's no wetting the palate, or you don't get a taste of everything with Marvel movies, unfortunately, and that's partly because there's no title sequence to get the music in there for you.
Yeah, hadn't considered it. Definitely like that Patrick Willems video, but I find kind of you're talking about the Fox fanfare. That's sort of that Marvel thing scrolling by is like, ooh, it's Marvel time. But absolutely, yeah, they're all showing up at the end. Perhaps to their discredit. But let's. I don't know.
I told you it was a weird aside. It's just
I want to agree with you. I'm just like, yeah, again.
You don't have to agree. It's,
not agree, but just like give it its due.
Yeah.
But again, it's like of all the criticisms.
Well, maybe I'll put it to the listeners. Like, tell us what do you think? Like, would you prefer there be longer title sequences in these movies or not?
Yeah. We'll get a little taste of the score here in the trailer, and we'll come back with the rest of our thoughts on the movie proper and not just the title cards.
We're Eternals. We came here 7,000 years ago to protect humans from the deviants.
Why didn't you guys help fight Thanos? Or any war, or all the other terrible things throughout history?
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
By who?
We need to find the others.
I haven't seen some of them for centuries.
Hello.
This is what the end of the world looks like. At least we have front row seats.
You know what's never saved the planet? Your sarcasm.
We have loved these people since the day we arrived. When you love something, you protect it.
Behold, a giant space triangle approaches Earth at the dawn of civilization. Within its symmetrical hull, it carries 20 to 30 characters called Eternals. Each one is sworn to protect human life, except from space invaders and big purple demigods. Oh, and the Time Siri became a sentient robot and lifted a city into the atmosphere. Definitely could have used some help with that one. Anyway, the important thing is they are here to protect us. That is, until the Eternals discover their true purpose on our planet is to birth a giant celestial being incubating in the Earth's core. The Celestial's birth will kill all humans, creating a tiny conundrum for our heroes. Should they be new mommy to a god, or save all humans? It's a toughie.
Yeah, this movie really traffics in like the trolley problem to the extreme. Like,
do I allow billions to die to save trillions?
Yeah, or like pull that lever. Yeah, that's the weighty sci-fi sort of theme we're trying to deal with here. But boy does it get muddled in a lot of other stuff.
Oh boy, does it. This movie is 5 pounds of movie in a 1 pound sack. And that's my biggest problem with it is there's way too much going on, and it's just layer upon layer of stuff, and it's so bloated, and it's so full of plot because it's trying to set up this lore, it's trying to introduce these characters, it's trying to forward multiple different plots at once, and it's too much for this movie. It's too much. It's
agreed.
Trying to juggle way too much. And I think that I might be tipping my hand a little bit on what my big fix is for this movie.
No, I don't think so, because I think that like the fact that there is just too much trying to go on in this already, like it's a long movie, but there is just too much movie.
Yeah.
And at least the way I see it is I'm not going to say there's too many characters, but there is a high volume of characters.
Yes.
There is a high volume of sort of sci-fi storytelling with these goals of
myth making as well.
Myth making, right? Goals of like discussing those like sci-fi ideas, like how to deal with the trolley problem and predestination and free will and determinism and all that good stuff. And they're trying to set up some other Marvel movies.
Yeah.
One of the
Kit
two
Harington
of them,
is just there to be in another Marvel movie.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's a matter of half of each. I think it's got to be one or the other.
I agree, actually. And again, at risk of tipping my hand a bit, I think I'm just going to say it. I think I think this should have been more than one movie. I think that this should have been 2 movies, and I'll just say that right now. I think there should have been an Eternals Part 1, and there should have been an Eternals Part 2, and half of this movie should have been in the first one, and half of this movie should have been in the second one. But not necessarily like just chop the movie in half. I mean, like fully extract major plot points and save that for the second part. And I'll get into the fine tuning of that when we really get into the nitty gritty of our fixes, but I'll just be up front. My fix is like separate some of this out. I think there's a lot of good in there. You just crammed it all together and it's made a hash of everything.
Yeah.
Liam, you mentioned Kit Harington's character, and he's definitely an interesting one to sort of examine as like how this movie's bloatedness creates problems. Because as Scott said, like he's just kind of there, or at least he seems to be, because he shows up in the opening sequence. We get a pretty decent introduction of who he is and his relationship to Cersei, the main character.
And for the record, I think the two of them have some good chemistry together. I quite like them.
Yeah, I think so. The trouble is, like, he goes away for a very long time,
most of
and
the
then
movie.
when he shows up on the phone, I was like, oh right. There he is.
That's
like, yeah. And the thing is like his character actually is kind of important in the sense that like it's Cersei's connection to humanity. That's what he's supposed to represent. And he's just not really in there enough to really sell that and hit that home.
Yeah.
They're too busy like worrying about all this other crap with all these other characters. You know, they've got way too many to worry about. Even some of the Eternals they kind of forget about, like the girl that goes really fast. What's her name? Makari. Yeah, I guess she's just hanging out in a spaceship for 500 years or something. I don't know. Like it's so yeah, they clearly had a little too much to handle with regards to characters. I agree with you, Liam, that maybe it's not necessarily a too many characters. It's just that there's maybe too much focus on characters that maybe don't matter as much. It's like, as much as I liked Kumail Nanjiani and his friend from Bollywood, the producer guy, which I actually thought was the one character that was actually funny. The rest of them were not. You know, that particular storyline is like kind of takes up way more screen time than it needs to. It almost feels like they're letting Kumail vamp a bit too much, and they're like, "This is good stuff. We got to leave it in."
And they're just desperate for comic relief.
Yeah.
I think one of the main criticisms I've heard of this movie is that it's just like people say too many characters, and I don't know that that's necessarily fair, because like there's lots of movies that have lots of characters. Like Royal Tenenbaums has as many characters.
Oh, more, I think.
But that's a movie about characters.
Yeah.
It's a series of character studies and their relationships together. And Royal Tenenbaums would also be 2.5 hours and need to be 5 if they also, along with sorting out their interpersonal drama, had to like stop a space seed from emerging from Earth.
And also had to fight a space monster.
Yes. So I think, maybe not if you're going to have that many characters, the movie needs to be about their relationships and not their collective relationship to some other cosmic plot.
Well, it works as both if you don't have as many cosmic plots, because there are 3 cosmic plots in this movie.
You've got my fix.
The cosmic plot of stopping the birth of a god, the cosmic plot of fighting an evolving super monster, and the cosmic plot of internal betrayal. And it's too much. And again, I think you just segment it out. You can have more time to get to know these characters and deal with one problem. And then in part 2, more time to deal with these characters while dealing with the bigger problem.
Yeah. What do we like about this movie? Because we're gonna quickly dovetail back into complaining about it. Well,
honestly, I'll say right up front, I think the cast is really good. I think they were all very well cast. I think that everybody had a very distinct identity. Like the characters didn't all kind of blend together. And I liked the charisma between the characters. I thought that they had a lot of chemistry together. So I'll start with that. I think that they nailed it with the cast. No notes there.
I enjoyed or appreciated Cersei's arc, partly because it's not a type of arc that's often given to a woman. The inheriting great responsibility that's usually in the domain of a male character.
In any other time period, Icarus would have become the new leader.
Right, yeah. Like, so I definitely appreciated that part of it. The last battle, I think, was pretty cool. That was like when I kind of suddenly woke up and like, oh, there's neat things happening. Like the fight between Icarus and the Speedy gal was really well done visually. It wasn't the typical like show things happening in the fast person's point of view. It was just like all you saw was just like this bolt of someone just like punching the crap out of Icarus and stuff like that. And I think the camera moved in interesting ways that made it a lot of fun. So I like that, and I liked the look of the Celestial popping out of the earth. I thought that actually looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate that the Celestials themselves kind of look kind of dumb.
Oh, I was going to disagree, because I was going to come at you with one of my favorite things was the production design, not just in how their powers manifest, sort of like halfway between Doctor Strange's hand wavy magic and Iron Man's hand wavy magic. Like they both sort of wave their hands over CGI effects and stuff happens. That's a real Marvel signature. And they made the ones the Eternals do look like a Marvel thing, but Eternals. So I thought that kind of like the costumes, that aspect of the production design, but also I thought the what are they called? Titans? No,
the Celestials.
Celestials. Thank you. I don't know why that slipped my mind there. Like look cool as hell. Like the three eyes, but then it's also kind of like worn and weathered, and the way like Selma Hayek is like a pixel on the screen up against its face, like really did a good job of giving it size.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That makes me excited for how one might try to do like a Galactus in the future. But yeah,
I should clarify. I like how the head looked. I don't like the design of the body. Like the head looks really menacing, but like they kind of have like weird tiny skinny leg body. I don't know. It doesn't. It looked weird.
Yeah,
to
they
me.
look like one of those art pose dolls. Yeah.
I think a lot of the production design actually did harken back to, I'm going to call it like Jack Kirby style, with a lot of the Art Deco sort of look of their suits, their powers. I feel like there was a lot of Jack Kirby injected into that, and I appreciate that. I think
you'd have to do this series justice, because I don't know much about the comics, but I know very much his baby, and he's as entwined in the history of it as like Stan Lee is in the Avengers and Spider-Man. Like,
yeah, actually, we did have a couple listeners who complained that it wasn't Jack Kirby enough.
Fair enough. I mean, that's fair. They needed to Marvel movie it up to make it consistent with the rest of the MCU. But I feel like they did at least give some service to kind of that Kirby-esque look and design.
Overall, I did not love the look of this movie. It was almost as if they did no color grading. The blacks were way too high. I kind of felt like I was watching sort of like this muddy gray thing through most of it. With the final action sequence, the final battle being the only one that I didn't really feel like I was watching a very ugly movie. And I did not like the design of the, what were the bad monsters called?
The Deviants.
The Deviants. I did not like the look of those at all. And more than that, the CGI was not convincing at all. And the main guy, once he turned in sort of more into like a humanoid bad guy, he looked real bad and not at all interesting. So there was a big F on the special effects for me, except for the Celestials. I was pretty nonplussed with most of it. And the triangle ship looked cool. I'll give it that.
No, it was very great. Like I said, I saw it in theaters, and like the whole movie is overcast.
Yeah.
There's no sunny skies. There's no beautiful battle in Wakanda on the back of a rhino in this one.
I will say, I do think that the movie plays with a lot of interesting sci-fi ideas. I don't know that it handles them all very well. I think it actually fumbles quite a few of them because it doesn't give itself the time to fully explore them. Like, it doesn't have the space to breathe because, again, it's too much movie crammed into its runtime. But I think that given more room to breathe, I honestly think that there's some good ideas in this movie. They just weren't explored very well.
Yeah. And I think it also creates a lot of the other really popular criticisms that I've seen of this film of the, like, it's a real easy movie to sci-fi nitpick. Like, there's so many, like, wait a minute, but, like, everything from, like, wouldn't something coming out of the ocean like that completely disrupt tidal waves? Why didn't they help with Thanos?
Yeah. Not only that, but that guy gets stuck halfway through the crust. Like, that's enough to move a significant chunk of the Earth's crust around. I would think that would have pretty awesome ramifications.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be on the 5 o'clock news for sure that a giant statue suddenly appeared in the Pacific.
Yeah. Well, it was.
I think there's massive global earthquakes.
And then there's the, like, they're not allowed to interfere except for when they do. What is it they can't interfere with? Just the fighting, but they can give us bombs, but they can't, like, that whole thing gets real, that weird binary of, like, you can't interfere except for all the times what we do and can.
I'll give him somewhat of a pass on that just because you want to tell the story the way that it's told in the comics, and it's a movie universe, and they aren't really made linearly, and you never really know what you're putting together. So I'll give them a pass on that. Like, if they've got to hand wave it, fine. It would have been better if they just ignored it completely.
On the interfering thing.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, I'm asking.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like with Thanos and stuff like that. Like, you could argue that, like, isn't he an Eternal? Like that would almost make me think that they really should have gotten involved, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's right. Isn't Thanos some kind of Eternal?
And that's the end, the bit at the post credits,
right?
Is like, I'm an Eternal and Thanos' brother, which then is like, well, does that make Thanos an Eternal?
Yeah.
In my mind, why didn't they help with Thanos? I think you can hand wave away. But this, like, binary of, like, you can interfere and not interfere. You can give them the atomic bomb, but not a plow too soon. That I found very frustrating. I was, like, willing to be like, yes.
Maybe he thought they were ready for the atomic bomb.
What's that?
He thought they were ready for the atomic bomb, and he was proven wrong.
But then you can't stop him from fighting. Yeah, that kind of cheesed me off, and my fix that.
In my head, he didn't straight up build them an atomic bomb. He just sort of, like, gave them the impetus for, I don't know, splitting the atom or something like that. And then he's standing at the foot of, like, what the result was. That's how I sort of, like, read it. But if there was something in there that he basically said he built the atomic bomb, then I missed it. I'm willing to be proven wrong.
Speaking of headcanon, I had to come up with some headcanon to bridge a slight logical gap in the movie. And that was why Icarus strung them along. Because he's more powerful than the rest of the group combined, is kind of what they more or less straight up say. So why does he have to hide the fact that he's betrayed them for so long? And it's not really spelled out in the movie why he does that. Is it because he thought that the rest of them would side with him and he just didn't want to turn them off by suggesting that he'd killed Ajax? Or was it because he wanted to keep them distracted for as long as possible? And he knew if he had them pointed at him, it would bring up too many questions. They'd figure out what was going on too quickly. And ultimately that was me headcanoning that. Is just like he was trying to string them along for as long as possible to allow the emergence to happen.
And what I said off the top here, giving it a second watch, certain things make more sense. They plant little seed, like, I don't want to say setups and payoffs, but they, like, introduce ideas in the beginning that do sort of back up some stuff later, but it's all very subtle and not the kind of stuff you're, like, clocking and remembering on the first watch. Because there's just, like, other stuff going on. Yeah. And then on the second watch, I'm like, oh, that was them that's them. This thing that everyone says they don't explain, they're actually explaining it in like the first scene. I can't think of a good example right now, but there's like a bunch of dialogue in the first act that I'm like, that's why they okay.
That makes sense.
But
now.
yeah, 2.5 hours later, you're like, I don't remember any of this.
Yeah, my sense of it was that Icarus was not telling them partly because he was in love with Cersei, and that he understood her connection to humanity was very strong, and like I think he just couldn't. He felt like he couldn't reveal that they were ultimately doomed. Because he just didn't want to do that to her, and also he just straight up understood that like she would want to defend them,
and
were that the case,
and knew that if he just didn't tell her, that the emergence would just happen.
Yeah,
exactly.
And there's the whole
and then they'd
memory
forget about
erasing aspect, right?
And then they'd forget about it because their minds would be erased.
Yeah, and then they would get to fall in love on another planet. Is that his hope? I don't know.
Well, it's not going to happen now because he flew into the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was really hoping there'd be more of.
People flying into the sun?
No, of them like showing the myth making of them, like how does Athena become Athena, god, protector of Athens? Like if they've touched all these moments in human history, I think there's like so much fun to be had of like showing us how these myths got made that they don't do much of, other than like the one scene in Babylonia or Babylonia and Babylon. There's not a lot of the, like, how they became these, like, inspirations for myths, like Icarus, like Athena, like Gilgamesh, Could have used more of that.
Yeah.
And that's another one of my fixes.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. Why does the big, heavy deviant side with Icarus at the end?
Because he wants to stop the emergence.
But he's siding with Icarus.
Why is he fighting with Icarus?
He's siding. He's siding with him.
No, he shows up to fight Icarus, but then Athena wants to kill him for killing Gilgamesh, and so she starts fighting him.
Yeah.
See, that was not clear to me.
Yeah, he actually showed up to help them stop the emergence, but then because he killed Gilgamesh and, technically killed Ajax, Icarus was 100% responsible for that. The rest of the team turn on him.
Okay.
Yeah, he was really just to give Athena an arc. It almost seemed like so that's who she had to fight at the end to get her due.
Spoiler alert, he's the main villain of my first movie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Spoilers for my fix. He's not in my version of the movie.
Fair. He's not in my version of the second movie for sure.
Speaking of all those fixes, I think we're up in time. So
that's perfect timing. Let's just hear from the folks at the Alberta Podcast Network, and we'll fix the heck out of Eternals. In Alberta, you get to choose where you buy your energy from. If you choose Park Power, your money stays here. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with local not-for-profits that are working to make a difference in their communities. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kazaski. And we love local here at the Alberta Podcast Network, so it's a great fit. Learn more at parkpower.ca.
Looking for a way to give back? ATB Cares makes it easy for all Albertans to support the causes they care about. Donate to your favorite charity through ATB Cares, and ATB will match 20% of every dollar donated to eligible Alberta charities. To learn more and donate, visit atbcares.com.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We have some notes for Eternals. I'm eager, but I want to hear what you guys have, because I wrote more notes on this than probably any episode previously. And I'm not sure how to share them concisely, because I really think there is a way to make this work in one movie.
I don't. Or rather, I think that there's a way to make a lot of this work in two movies. And I think the way you do it is you set the first movie actually in the past. Not in the distant past, and I do think that you should keep some of the flashbacks through both movies to show some of their history and stuff. But I think you start the first movie in like the 70s, And it's them fighting the last deviant, them finding and fighting the last deviant. And this deviant is bigger, it's evolved more, it's able to absorb their powers, and this becomes like the big bad of their first movie. But as it becomes more articulate, as it becomes more intelligent, it begins to let slip the bigger plot, basically, and reveal to them, like, you are, like, we were also created by the Celestials. We were supposed to be doing your job, and we became too good at it. And now you're here to clean up their mess, but you're also just automatons. You're less than we are because we're really alive. And you don't know the real purpose behind what this planet is about. And this becomes the setup for the second movie. They kill it, but it's laid the seeds of doubt in their faith in their mission. And the second movie starts with Ajax having figured out what's going on and then getting mysteriously killed. And then they need to kind of bring because the first movie has them have a falling out at the end. Mm-hmm. And the second movie is now Cersei and Sprite and Icarus have to bring the group back together to solve who killed Ajax. Psych, turns out Icarus did, because Ajax was going to try to stop the emergence, which is the bigger scope problem of the second movie. He's a true believer, and the rest of the team now has to defeat Icarus to stop the emergence and save the planet Earth. And there's your two movies separated out. Your A-plot, killing the last of the deviants in the past and having the family fall apart so that we can bring the family back together in the second movie and solve the murder mystery, find out who the traitor is, and stop the destruction of the Earth and deal with the ramifications of that. And I think that way you also, then you can save Kit Harington for the second movie, because Icarus has been out of the picture for years. Because the second movie, if the first movie takes place in like the 70s or 80s, the second movie takes place in the modern era.
Yeah. I like your 70s thing, and it touches on that as well.
The reason I said it in the 70s, for the record, is because The Eternals was first published in the 70s, which is why I thought it would be fun to set it in the 70s.
Yeah,
that's kind of my big, large scope fix, is you separate out the big plots into two movies. That way the characters also have more time to breathe and to interact with one another, and for us to kind of get to know them in the first movie, so that it's a bigger deal when Ajax is dead in the second movie, when Icarus betrays the group in the second movie, and when the group finds each other again in the second movie. I think that's more interesting.
I think yours touches on something nicely too that we even kind of discussed in the first half. The last third of this movie, like the last act, is pretty solid. Like, it's a convoluted walk to get there. It's a very long walk to get there, but for the most part, the third act makes mostly sense and is good. So yeah, I like that it leaves that mostly unchanged, as does my version.
Yeah, the and like, you can have a little bit of hanging mystery as well. Like, we've defeated the last of the deviants, but we haven't been called away. What's up with that? And I don't think the movies both need to be 2.5 hours long, for the record. I think you can make two smaller movies so that it's a little bit easier to watch. Movies. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of my broad fix. I feel like there's maybe a lot of like little stuff that could be tweaked up here and there in it. But yeah, I think this could have been two movies. You film them back to back, you bang them both out, you release them like a year apart, you're good.
Sick. Greg, did you have any
I was
big
just trying to like
details?
I was trying to think about a way of piggybacking off of what Scott said, because I don't know if I had a fully fleshed out idea of what I wanted to fix, but I do feel that the crux of the movie is, or that one of the main themes of the movie that seems to want to talk about is like whether humanity is worth saving or not. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't do a great job exploring that.
I can build off that if you want me to, because I think part of the first movie, if it's set in the 70s, can be about how maybe humanity isn't worth saving. You can really focus on a lot of the bad stuff that's going on around that time period. And as they travel around hunting down this deviant, you can focus on them kind of growing a little disillusioned as part of the overarching plot of this family falling apart, having a falling out. So that we come to the second movie, though, but that sets up for the second movie, because as they come back together, they also rediscover their faith in humanity. They start to see the good in people. That's why you have Kit Harington in the second movie. You have them reconnect with humanity and realize, no, this is a planet worth saving. It is the right thing to stop Icarus and stop the emergence. We're going to stand up to God and tell him he's wrong.
If that deviant, having got himself much more intelligent over many centuries of hoovering up Eternals here and there, if like he became kind of almost like a puppet master for humanity, like he's decided that that's the best way to destroy humanity.
To stop the celestial emergence is to have humanity wipe itself out. Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah,
that's solid.
A wrinkle.
That actually plays into that whole the nuclear thing, and it also plays into like them giving technology, because in a way they're sort of like helping out the deviant's plan.
I like
right?
That is solid. That is a solid idea.
That's the new way to apex predator. I like that. I like that a lot, and I think I like as well exploring that theme of humanity, whether it's worth being saved. I don't even think it's necessarily a like worth being saved. I watched Mitchell's versus the Machine today, and that was the villain's big thing. Mm-hmm. But just more like humanity is special and unique as compared to other life in the cosmos. They're more special than others. I think is an interesting theme of like, we're so volatile. We're so like, the extremes of good and the extremes of bad are off the charts. And that's kind of, what I want my version to explore more. So if you'll indulge me.
Absolutely.
I think how you can fit all this movie into one movie, explore this theme that we were talking about of like nature versus nurture, by just cutting out the deviants entirely. I think they are where most of the plot convolution comes from. I don't fully understand the thing about how like they were, sent to be apex predators, but then they lost control.
That's why you have a whole first movie to set it up.
And that's great, sure. Or we can not worry about any of that. and we just make it like the Eternals were sent to Earth to protect humanity's growth. Like parents, like a chicken sitting on an egg, it was their job to like nurture the life force on Earth so that this egg can go. So then the themes become about patronage, about family, about nature and nurture. And it also loses that we can't interfere binary that's so confusing that I didn't like. Because now it's like they are allowed to interfere. They're allowed to like coax humanity to like evolve. Kind of like parents raising a child. Sometimes you're very direct, other times it's sort of hands off. And there's a lot of infighting with the Eternals about how that is. It does mean that we don't have big bombastic Marvel action sequences in the beginning where they're fighting fucking CG monsters. So I think it's more that those early action scenes will be like the Eternals protecting humans from things like natural weather threats, volcanoes. I even, as I was typing this, I was like, maybe even bizarre predators that aren't these space gods tied to their history, or space monsters tied to their history. Cause like monsters are not outside the purview of the MCU. They have this godlike mythologizing angle to the Eternals, so why not have them fight like a big ass lion or some kind of Shang-Chi dragon? And that's how we get the myths of dragons. That's how we get the myths of like griffins and calopid. I always forget how to pronounce it, but like quaddles and shit, right? Like all the different mythological beasts they actually did kick the shit out of years ago. Great. So they're coaxing humanity, they're protecting them from volcanoes and dragons, and all the while they're fucking each other and arguing about what's best for humanity and having infighting, right? And of course, Ajax and Icarus know the truth. So as time is going on, we're seeing humanity's ability to be these special, absurd, beautiful bastards, right? Extremes of good and bad. And this difficult behavior, combined with the internal drama within the Eternals, comes to a head. Everybody quits, right? Team splits up, because they can't agree on like how to raise this difficult child of humanity. And so by doing that, you then fast forward to modern times. Ajax has rekindled her love of humanity and has learned her way, just like you were saying, Greg and Scott. But then she is suspiciously killed before she can gather everyone to stop the emergence. She was going to tell everyone, hey, there's emergence. And the third act plays out all the same. So you cut the deviants, you make them have to struggle to protect humanity from natural threats and their own infighting. They don't make it to the end, and it costs everyone everything. Third act's the same.
Now, fun fact, in the original comics, the deviants were the creatures of myth, and that's actually where that comes from.
Sick.
Yeah.
That was not clear in this movie.
No, it's not clear in this movie. But as I understand the comic lore, the reason why we have myths of minotaurs and dragons and griffins, those were actually deviants.
There's a fucking dragon at the end of Shang-Chi. There's literally no reason
to not have another dragon.
Just have another dragon for them to fight. So, I'm sure again, it's probably true to the comics, but if you just cut out the deviants, that's my main fix. I have a second one, but I want to chew on that for a second. Did that track? Did that
No, it does track.
Do you think there would be enough action to make it a satisfying Marvel movie?
Does a Marvel movie need to have a ton of action in it?
Well, action, yes. It's just not combat. Because
why can't a Marvel movie be more thoughtful? That's
meditative.
my legit question. It would certainly defy audience expectations, but why couldn't Marvel do Arrival? Why not?
Yeah.
That's my legit question. Why not?
And you'd be able to explore those ideas of we're nurturing, evolution, destiny, free will.
And you still get
the big Eternals' only job.
And you still get a big third act drag out fight between them. So.
Yeah. And that's the thing that we get to learn about their characters in all the way they fight like parents between the 10 of them instead of just between the 2 of them. I mean, you guys are parents, probably don't always agree on... What's that?
Who gets humanity in the divorce?
Yeah, exactly. 10-way parental squabbles would make for a Royal Tenenbaums-esque interesting exploration of 10 characters, right?
And they would definitely all have different ideas of how to help humanity grow.
Yeah, and especially because humanity's such a tumultuous and chaotic species, it gets harder and harder. It's not as easy as all the other times.
Yeah,
right?
so some of them want to inspire them, some of them want to instruct them, some of them want to guide them, some of them want to nurture them. I see how they would have different philosophies.
Yeah, way more interesting than just punching some poorly CGI'd weirdos. So my second fix, and this is why I got excited about your 70s comment there, Scott. My second most fix just mostly fixes the Thanos question, and I know we can just hand wave it away, but I feel like it helps. Set the movie literally any time in the 20th century, pre-Avengers, pre-Captain Marvel even, Skrull Invasion, because this movie ends with none of them on the planet, right? Mm-hmm. By the end of this movie, there are no Eternals on Earth.
Yeah, half of them have gone to look for more Eternals, and the other half have been stolen by Space God to account for their sins.
So if there's literally no Eternals on Earth, then come have you, Thanos, Skrulls, whatever. It's written right there. It's just that explains why they end up with Thanos. They're not on the planet anymore because nothing in this movie needs to happen in the 2020s.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
And so I was thinking, well, when do you set it? 70s would be fine. Marvel's done World War II pastiche. Marvel's done 90s pastiche. I think 70s would be a great choice. My other one would be the Roaring 20s because it's such a time of opulence and growth. It's other than the post-war boom, it's the other most recent boom in human growth.
Well, plus if there's some discussion about whether humanity is inherently good or inherently bad and therefore inherently worth saving or not, the 20s is just after the First World War.
Yeah,
there's the economic.
You lose the A-bomb, but you get mustard gas.
Yeah,
the same thing gets done. So. That was my other pitch. And then you just have, you just set up the Black Knight movie 3 generations earlier than
with
Dane
his
Whitman.
great-grandfather. Yeah.
His great-grandfather. So that was my other pitch, was just set it before the Avengers because none of them end the movie on the planet anyway.
Damn.
So.
Yeah, is Kit Harington the reason, is his character the reason why it's set in the modern day just because they wanted to set up that character? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good example of that world building not helping itself out all that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that emergence could have happened at any point
Yeah.
In fact, the farther back you go, the more becomes easy to explain how nobody noticed a space god crawling out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Because it's been there for like 100 years now. Nobody cares.
It's
a tourist attraction.
Its Pinky was what sunk the Titanic.
It's a tourist attraction now. Nobody really cares.
Yeah.
Everybody's been there. I like both of our fixes, honestly. I like the 2-movie idea. I do like your more streamlined 1 movie. I think we nailed it, guys. I think we legitimately came up with 2 alternate but equally viable fixes for this film.
Yeah, to the point where I wonder how much of just like that need to have Kit Harington and the need to have CGI monsters for him to fight were the main reasons this maybe didn't work. It could have been a heady, thoughtful Arrival type movie.
Yeah. The feeling like Disney would be too scared to do something like that.
Cowards, do it, Disney. Do Arrival in Marvel. I dare you.
Yeah.
Love the comments on this one. Some of the most engagements we've had. So I'm excited to get into it because, oh boy, did our listeners have some thoughts on this film as well. As always, a couple days before we record, we will solicit your comments on our social medias. I have some notes on Facebook, I have some notes on Twitter, and I have some notes pod on Instagram. Adam Star Ruvola says, I think it's beautiful. Leave it alone. It's going to age well.
Too late. We didn't leave it alone.
It's ugly and already has complicated. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it will age well. Who knows? Maybe in hindsight, with more of the movies that come out, things will make a little more sense. Plots will kind of resolve themselves, and we'll be able to look back and say, you know what? This movie was underrated. It's not that bad.
I suppose anything's possible. I doubt it. I feel like it's going to be one of those ones that'll get forgotten.
Yeah, that's probably true. It'll be the Thor Dark World of this.
Yeah.
like its plots are kind of accepted as something that happened, but we don't really talk about the movie.
Brian LaBelle says, I actually don't think there is a need to fix it. Like most creation myths, it's dense and difficult to get through the vast amount of information dumped in the story, but it does an important job of explaining the creation of the universe and setting up things to come.
It is the Silmarillion.
Is that an important job? Is that? Are we sure that's an important job?
It is the Silmarillion of the MCU.
Yes. When you said that, Scott, in chat, that made me, I was immediately like, oh, I'm gonna hate this.
Which is both these comments make me want to reiterate. It did make a little. I liked it more the second time around.
I might have to go back.
I knew what was. Yeah.
I know Anita wants to see it. I didn't have the chance to watch it. Well, usually I watch the movie with my wife, but I didn't have the chance to watch it with her this time around. And I think she kind of is interested. I know she wasn't super jazzed about it. And I think maybe that's an excuse to give it another watch and see if it does make more sense to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's more enjoyable. It just maybe makes more sense. Matt Bose says, make it look more like Jack Kirby than a Jack Kmark parking lot.
Yeah, it's a comment, basically just saying, like we were saying earlier, but like how it just looks pretty gray throughout the entire thing.
And that's, well, a lot of the visual aesthetic and design definitely harkened back to Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby also dealt with like really vibrant colors.
Yeah,
which
we were looking at
really
the celestial
blacks.
Designs, and like they're all different colors, and they all look different. And
I think that's a fair point. Is that they could have made the colors pop a lot more in this movie.
Yeah.
Obviously they're trying to tie it into the full MCU, but I wonder if it would have been better as an animated, like a Into the Spider-Verse aesthetic.
Maybe. Hard to say.
I think it would have been much better, and then wouldn't have been an MCU movie.
Yeah.
We get Harrington's got to get paid, baby. Tony says, finding all the characters was repetitive. Cut down one of them. Yeah, big getting the band back together.
Yeah,
vibes.
It took up most of the movie.
2 movies, you have more time to deal with all those characters and get to know them better. Just saying.
Robin from Cinematological says, drop the opening sequence, start the movie in Babylon. Explain why Gilgamesh loves Thena. Drop the mystery and have Icarus betray them openly because they can't beat him. Make the solution to stopping Icarus the emergence about being human instead of a unimind.
I mean, we kind of touched on that, how part of their motivation for saving the world really does have to tie into the fact that for most of them, they've discovered a love of humanity, and they do feel the planet is worth saving. And I think that kind of ties into that a little bit. And I think maybe you could have done more with that. Maybe it doesn't really, the Unimind doesn't really, we didn't even talk about the Unimind at all through this podcast. So like, that's how much of an impact that
Well, I was
had on
confused
this.
with how it was supposed to work, because I thought like they all had to be part of it, but like Kamel Nanjiani just doesn't show up in the climax. Like, so I guess they needed less power than they thought. I don't know.
He was part of it, we just didn't see it. Because she does say at the end that they were all connected ultimately through the Celestial itself. That's how she was able to tap into all of that power and tap into all of their power.
Right.
Was because the Celestial itself had become part of the Unimind in a way.
But he didn't have the bracelet. He needed the bracelet, Scott.
They were all linked up to the Celestial because that's how they repeatedly survived being on planets that exploded.
Lori Plant says, I forget their name, the mistakes, random evolving creature things. The deviants, yes. Lori. They were the deviants. The moment it evolved and acquired the ability to speak, it makes a good point. They are fighting the same mad god. Yet, because reasons, they must still fight it. Like, for fuck's sake, you said the interesting part out loud and still treated them like a baddie and had the stupid pointless fight scene for zero purpose other than to have, stupid purpose other than having to tie up a dumb loose end.
Yeah. I kind of like the fix that we had for our first movie solution, which was Greg's suggestion that the deviant is sabotaging the emergence by trying to get humanity to kill itself off. And therefore, it is still a baddie that does still need to be defeated, even though it does have a good point. And that's the point that ultimately plants the seeds for them to fall apart and for them to start to doubt their god's plan. I think that works as a good fix for that. And then, of course, Liam's fix for it is just don't even have that in the movie.
It just complicates it. Then it's just about
for Liam, they are the mistakes.
Yeah.
Liam is the Celestial of this movie, trying to wipe the deviants out from existence. And then he's going to blow up the movie to birth another Liam.
Yeah,
just to take my metaphor to its extreme.
Think about how many podcasts will be poorly hosted if we don't let this. Stephanie Chan says, maybe don't jump the timeline around. Perhaps it should have been 2 movies or an MCU series. Ding, ding, ding.
I mean, we suggested essentially both of those things now.
Yeah. Stephanie's nailing it with the next comment. Don't fight the monsters. They did not add anything to the story for me. That's what I said. Crushing it, Steph. I felt like there were a lot of deep themes that were not treated as such.
Also something we discussed.
Yeah.
Nope.
That was the lottery win of of the listener comments.
Yeah, sorry, I should say that off the top. You guys are actually trying to guess what our fixes are going to be when we solicit these from you, and there's prizes awarded if you guess correctly. We don't actually care what you think. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding. We love it. At Talking SMAC Pod says, first, I like the Eternals. I think it's better than people are giving it credit. I think you can get rid of 2, maybe 3 characters and combine those traits into other characters. Give Cersei more character. She's driven solely by her mission. We don't know much about her.
I kind of disagree. I think Cersei grows the most, arguably, out of all of them.
Growth might be a strong word. I mean, she does feel like she's not prepared at all to be the leader. So she does complete that arc quite well. So you're right. Her humanity is sort of explored through her relationship with Icarus. So there's a lot more going on there than just about any other character. I think.
Because Icarus is driven solely by the mission, and Cersei while he and Cersei are lovers, they're also foils for one another.
Yeah.
The one who has realized that this planet is worth saving, and the one who is solely focused on laser focused on the bigger picture. And then the question kind of becomes which one of them will bend first, right?
Yeah.
So, and ultimately,
and that's
Superman
that's Icarus's arc too. Is just realizing that he's taken things too far, and then yeeting himself into the sun, as one of the listeners said at one point. I think I edited that one out, but yeah, that was a good line. I think it was Laurie who said that.
Which, if we were going to just cut characters out entirely, which Eternal do you cut?
Oh,
the Charles Xavier guy?
no, I'd cut Gilgamesh and Thena. They have their own subplot kind of separated from everybody else, and if I was to cut anybody, I'd excise them from the movie. I think everybody else has a role to play in the main plot, and the two of them, not as much.
I think I'd probably just cut Makari, because she's the one who spends most of the movie waiting in the car for the rest of them.
I mean, if Gilgamesh and Thena aren't there taking up space with their own little subplot, I think she maybe has more to do. But yeah. I think we can have all of them still if we have more time to play with them. But if you, gun to my head, told me I have to cut one or two characters, they're the two easiest, I think, to get rid of.
Yeah, I was just curious. Just to flat cut like that. Alex B comments, make it a series. Clearly set up the ensemble cast and specifically what their powers are. Show them just as flawed as humans, falling in love, hubris, etc. My big pet peeve is Eternals manipulating and giving humans no choice, but I don't know how to fix that.
I feel like the humans do have a choice, and that's one of the things that frustrates them so through this movie. Like, that's the reason why Phastos ultimately falls out of love with humans for the longest time after the atomic bomb, because humans chose to use technology he was introducing for the benefit of humanity to destroy one another. And I feel like that's a frustration that many of them share as well. Like, that's one of the reasons why Druig walks out on the mission, is because he's like, we're not doing anything to stop them from killing one another. Like, their choice is a problem, and I'm going to take it away from them. That's what his ultimate resolution to that problem is. So I feel like it is explored.
Yeah. Chris comments, I say 2 100 to 120 minute movies. Yeah, that's seems to be the consensus, Chris. Crushing it. I want one movie. I don't know that I need 2 of these, but
one was enough.
It does seem like the most easy way to fix a film like this. Chris continues, number 1, set it in the MCU's 5-year gaps. The bad guys start to wake up, so have a fun gathering the team adventure. Movie number 2 is set post-Endgame, who killed Selma Hayek, and then the big heel turn. And if the first one bombs, then they wouldn't get to do the big Egg Celestial story, but honestly, that could always be recycled into a better Fantastic Four movie anyway.
I think you just, you do the 2 movies. Even if the first one bombs, you Lord of the Rings it, you film them back to back so that you have the same cast, unaging, and especially because you have one younger character in the movie, like banging them out all at once means that you don't have to worry about 2 or 3 years later that actor looking different. And then you just release them a year apart, and even if the first one didn't do good, you're Marvel. You can just release the second one. Who cares?
Yeah.
You've got Disney money. You can afford to have a movie bomb and still release the sequel. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think 2 movies makes more sense than a series, just because I think in the story that's at least the one that we're told, I think there's like a natural halfway break, whereas I don't think you can make 6 or 8 episodes. Like, not enough things happen.
You could probably
chapterly or episodically.
You could probably build it out, or you could even, I'm going to bear with me, Arrested Development it, and have each episode for the first part of the series focus on one of the characters and then bring them together.
Yeah.
I suppose Heroes kind of did that too.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that this movie is inherently cinematic in its imagery, and maybe that's good enough reason to throw it into theaters, just because you have the big celestials and that big sort of special effects set piece.
That's another good point. Yeah.
I will say though that one thing that Disney has shown with some of their Disney Plus series is that they can do cinematic on the small screen. They can give you a cinematic film, even when they're doing a television series. They can still give you cinematic imagery, big visuals, They have the money to throw around to do that, and I kind of appreciate that on one level. So
perhaps if they were to make it into a series, the way you chapterize it is using my suggestion of make it more about the myths that they've helped build over the years.
Yeah.
And each episode is like a different myth coming to fruition.
That could be fun.
Or you could definitely fill out episodes by having flashbacks, like have part of the episode set in the present as they're dealing with the meta plot, and part of the episode set as they're remembering experiences that tie into that.
Just like Lost.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, some good ideas. Again, this movie is full of good ideas. It just doesn't really execute on them very well. And I think why we have so many kind of options in front of us for ways that this could have been done a little better, like it could have been handled better. I'd say this movie was definitely in our sweet spot. A movie that's just good enough to be fine, but just bad enough to be like, oh, it could have been better.
Yeah.
Could have been so much better.
And I even wonder if how many of those problems with it are like a matter of sort of production by committee and the telephone game of the studio system, where like by time it gets to the end, enough people have put their hands on it that it's just like a little warped and wobbly, and like
That's the way that a lot of Marvel movies feel in the long run. I don't know. They just don't have that. They just don't have that. They don't have that feel of like a movie that has a vision. You know, the only one that really did was Thor Ragnarok, in my mind.
I will say, on the other hand, they don't feel like a DC movie where it feels like they were putting it together while they were filming it. Like it feels like Marvel movies. There was forethought that went into the movie before they actually started filming the movie.
Yeah.
Well, I was excited to watch this again, and I was excited for all the engagement we got on it.
Yeah.
More. Would you believe people like the Marvel movies? But until then, please, thank you for listening. Please follow us on social media, and wherever it is you happen to be listening to this, give us a review, a like, a subscribe. We do appreciate it.
You know, Kingo is a big Bollywood star, so he almost certainly would have featured on Bollywood is for Lovers. Matt Bowes and Aaron Fraser explore the world of Hindi cinema through the lens of two Canadian cinephiles. You can check them out right now, along with plenty of other great podcasts at albertapodcastnetwork.com.
The listener selected season continues. We'll have a poll going up sometime, I guess, in the next few days after this episode is released. I believe we're going to put End of Days and what was the other one? Highlander 2 up against each other. So you get to select between those two.
Until then, I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies
For giant space gods.